Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the EURALO ICANN75 multilingual readout on Tuesday, the 4th of October, 2022. In the interest of time, we will not do a roll call, but all attendees' names will be noted on the wiki agenda page after today's meeting. We will have English, Spanish, and Russian interpretation on today's meeting. A kind reminder to please speak clearly and slowly to allow for accurate interpretation. And also, please state your names every time you speak, not only for transcription purposes, but also for the interpreters to identify you on the other language channels. And for those presenting today, we do encourage you to use your cameras, if at all possible, when presenting to make it a little more personal. And thank you so much. I will now hand the meeting back over to Sébastien Bachelet, Chair of EURALO. Please begin.
Okay, thank you very much. Sébastien Bachelet speaking. I am in a room they just finished a meeting of the ISOC France board. It's why we are here. And I guess that my other colleagues are joining by video also. First of all, I would like to apologize. We were not able to have French interpretation today because there is an event in Africa who mobilize all the interpreters from French to other languages. Therefore, we have decided to keep the date, but not to have French. It's a pity, but it's what we can do the best. I will give the floor to Chris Mondini, and then after I would like to ask each speaker to give the floor to the next one, like that you will not hear me too much and it will be okay. I would like, I will repeat it at the end, but really thanks all the ones who are participating and giving some information about what they have heard during the ICANN meeting. There are people who are here where they were online. There were people who were in Kuala Lumpur, and thank you for that. And now I give the floor to Chris. Chris, please take the floor. Thank you.
Hello, Sébastien. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Mondini. I'm the Managing Director for ICANN.org in the European region based in Brussels. I'm very happy to be with you today to give a few highlights from the meeting. We held a meeting in the hybrid format with 1,957 participants from 112 countries, and 1,100 or so of those people were in person, and nearly 800 participated remotely. As it was held in Kuala Lumpur, as you would imagine, about 45% of the attendees were from the Asia-Pacific region, and we're very grateful for the engagement there. But Europe was well represented with over 200 attendees, about 17% of the total. And we tried to give both a seamless experience for the hybrid remote attendees and keep the on-site in-person attendees safe. We had a number of COVID measures with masking and testing. It makes microphone use and lip reading and communication sometimes challenging, but it's important as we work our way back to hybrid. It was an annual general meeting. We had leadership changes at the board, a new chair, a new vice chair. I want to highlight some European leaders. We have Danko Jevtovic, who is with us today as vice chair. Christian Kaufman is a new member based in Munich. And also Tobias Sattler was elected to serve on the Public Technical Identifier Board. We had some ceremonial events. We gave Wolfgang Kleinwachter, a well-known leader in training of summer schools of internet governance, the Tarek Kamal Prize, which was for capacity building. And I was very pleased that we could spend an entire day celebrating the hardworking volunteers who work on universal acceptance, international domain names, and label generation. This is 10,000 plus hours of volunteer work over the last decade plus, 41 countries represented, and a great example of how we make the internet better for people all over the world. I won't go into the policy and plenary highlights. I suspect my fellow presenters will touch upon them, but we were very pleased to, as an org, present at the close of the meeting on governmental and regulatory issues and the various processes that we're following around the world that can affect internet governance and the ICANN mission. And so I've gone over my 180 seconds, I believe. I apologize, but I'm going to pass it very quickly to my friend, colleague, and our board member, Katrina Sataki. Katrina.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here and speak as the first from the board. So my colleagues will talk to you later and fill in some details. I will share some of my thoughts after ICANN75. You may know the board came together a few days before the actual start of the conference, and it was a great opportunity to discuss well, hot topics, learn more about each other. Unfortunately, 4 board members concluded their terms of service on the board, so they left the team. But as you probably know, that Chris already mentioned, we have new members, 4 fantastic colleagues, Christian, Chris, Sajid, and Wes. They are already actively participating and contributing to discussions. And here I could see benefits of this face-to-face interaction. Because as I joined the board during the times when we communicated remotely, for me it took longer to adjust. So I was very happy to see our new colleagues so active already. So what did we discuss? We talked about the ways to foster further collaboration and communication with the community. Of course, it's always very high on board's radar. We listened to various updates, DNS abuse, policy development, other activities taking place throughout ICANN. Another interesting update was about the annual ICANN employee survey, for example. Some things I heard and took note during the public forum, something I wanted to share with you. Well, first, there seemed to be an interest to allocate a longer slot, well, at least 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes to the public forum. If so, I would like to encourage you to continue voicing this wish during the planning for the next meetings. Then I sensed appetite to ensure collaboration between the board and various community groups, including between those community groups across the meeting, so be more active in this collaboration. If you have any ideas how you see it implemented, just again, please share them during the planning phase. Another good suggestion, I'm sure that Sebastian will fully support it. We need to be mindful of those who are not well versed in acronyms that we use at ICANN meetings, because, well, ICANNese is a very difficult language. Well, I will try to remember it. On a personal note, my board colleagues entrusted me with the position of the chair of the Organizational Effectiveness Committee, or OEC. As you may know, this committee oversees the specific and periodic organizational reviews and some other reviews. And one of the things that is high on our radar and your radar as well, I'm sure, a pilot holistic review. So keep tuned. Thank you very much. And with that, I will pass the floor to Chris Buckridge. So, Chris.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? I didn't get a chance to test. Yep, wonderful. So my name's Chris Buckridge. I'm coming from the RIPE NCC. I was there on site in KL. So I'm giving a bit of an update from numbers community side, and there's not a huge amount from the numbers community that happened this time, but I think there's a couple of important things to note. There was in the opening ceremony, Paul Wilson, who is currently chair of the NRO, Number Resource Organization, and is CEO of APNIC, so it was his region as well, was giving the traditional opening remarks in the opening ceremony, but actually gave that slot across to Eddie Kayahura, who's the CEO of AFRINIC. And I think that was a really valuable opportunity for Eddie to speak a bit about some of the challenges that AFRINIC, the RIR in Africa, is currently facing in terms of legal challenges from one of their members, which has been a really significant challenge for that organization. And I think has also been quite a lightning rod for some of the people, some of the stakeholders that we know who are looking at examples or reasons that they can point to why the multi-stakeholder system is perhaps not the best way to do this. So I think that that's been really a good opportunity for us to speak a little bit more about that, to explain what's going on there, to explain the support that the iStar community has had for AFRINIC and has brought to AFRINIC. And it was also a really opportune moment as well, because coming into what we're now in with the ITU plenipotentiary happening in Bucharest, there were a number of governments who had GAC members there who were very interested to hear more about that and to understand those discussions before they may come up in those plenipotentiary discussions. So that was really good and really important. I was also really pleased to see, and this is coming back to face-to-face meetings, it was a really nice organization that to have the APNIC meeting and the APRIGF and the AP School on Internet Governance all the week before in Singapore, which I can report is a relatively easy 6-hour bus ride away. But I think as we're all looking at coming back to travel is very expensive at the moment. We're also increasingly aware of the environmental impacts. This kind of co-locating events to have allow people to sort of come together in various different formations in a relatively close geographic area is really important. And I really found it very valuable to have those 2 weeks of different events and for ICANN to be part of that. I think that it was already mentioned Christian Kaufman joined the board this time around. Christian may be familiar to some of you. He is a very recent former chair of the RIPE NCC board. So as an ASO appointment, he's coming from the numbers community, very well versed in that community and the issues there, a very experienced board member. So it's great to have him joining the board there. And finally to note, yeah, there wasn't a meeting of the ASO AC at the ICANN meeting this time around. But there were a few ASO AC folks there. Some of you from Europe might have seen Sander Stefan walking around. But the ASO AC is going to have its face-to-face meeting at the RIPE 85 meeting, which is happening in Belgrade later this month. So an invitation to those who might not, will have an interest in that. We'd love to see you there in Serbia for that meeting. So that's it for me. Thank you. I don't know who's next, I'm afraid. So I'll pass the mic a little blindly here.
Hi, Roberto, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Roberto Gaetano for the recording. And yes, indeed, I'm the next. I had the privilege of being next-gen mentor for ICANN75. And so I'm going to talk about what was the experience with next-gen. The next-gen are selected for every meeting in the region where the meeting is held. So all the folks were from Asia Pacific. And they go through a learning period in the 8 weeks before the meeting, supported by the mentors. And then at the meeting, they have to attend certain specific sessions and they have to do some presentations on a topic that they choose. I have to say that while they were supposed to be learning from me as a mentor, I have to say that indeed I have learned a lot from them. Fresh ideas, things that can only come from people who are outside the ICANN bubble, although they are aware of the ICANN community. And I have to say that in the presentations, there were certain topics just off my memory. There was one presentation on the emerging identifiers. This is something that even within the ICANN community, we don't know a lot. And it was astonishing to hear that from the outside. We had a presentation about the internet in Nepal. We had a lot of things. There were some interest in DNS abuse. I could also put in contact the people that were interested with the DNS Abuse Institute. So it is in fact a very good interchange. I have to say a couple of things. I was a little bit upset by the lack of participation from the rest of the ICANN community to the presentations of the next gen. And that is a pity, but there's a recording for this presentation. And if you want to catch up, I invite you to listen to those presentations. It is very, very important for us to communicate with this next gen, because those are the people who are going to replace us and are going to be exactly the new generation. I have just one case in mind. One person was next gen at the last at ICANN74. Now is a fellow. He is even now a EURALO individual member. So they can be onboarded and can bring new ideas. The last thing is that part of the community, the Contracted Party House and EURALO held specific sessions for introducing the next gen to their community. Sorry for being over time. That's it for me. I think that the next person is Irina Danelia from the CCTLD.
Thank you very much, Roberto. My name is Irina Danelia. I'm a member of the Council of the Country Code Names Supporting Organization, and it was definitely very nice to participate in the second hybrid meeting. And one of the main highlights for CCNSO at this meeting was that some of the CCNSO sessions for the first time had simultaneous interpretation in 3 languages, French, Spanish, and English. It's kind of experiment, and we are looking for the feedback and whether this was a good idea and what the participants think about it. The second highlight of this meeting, and maybe the main event for the CCNSO, was that ICANN board finally approved CCNSO policy on the retirement of the CCTLDs. CCNSO members and councils actually approved this policy a year ago and submitted it to ICANN board's considerations. And now, after a year, it is finally approved, and board directed ICANN.org to start implementation of this policy. However, since the time frame to implement the policy recommendations is not specified in the board's resolution, we will definitely keep our eyes on to avoid another 2 years of delay with the implementation. The other 2 policy development processes in the CCNSO are making quite a good progress. And we made a presentation to the community and to the GOC members, and they both seem to complete both working groups seem to complete their work in 2023. Actually, the PDP on the review mechanisms for the decisions regarding the delegation, transfer, revocation, and retirement of CCTLDs aims to provide its draft report for public comment even before the new year. So please stay tuned and provide us with the comments. So the last thing to mention is that we had a session on geographical indications. You might be aware of the latest proposals of European Commission's which aim to reform framework on geographical indications and provide them additional protection. So these processes also go in other regions, and we had a session to explore the potential impact of the regulation and legislation on CCTLDs. With that, thank you very much for having me here. And I pass the floor to Nigel, I believe.
Yes, thank you so much, Irina, and good afternoon or good evening. Sorry about my voice. I've been doing too much talking in Bucharest. I've been at the plenipotentiary. Thank you very much, Sebastian, for organising this session again. It's a great opportunity to feedback a few thoughts, and I'll try and be as brief as possible because there's a lot of very good people to follow. I participated remotely, but we had one of my colleagues was on the ground, so I think it was a good mixture, and I thought the hybrid format worked very well for this ICANN meeting. I think you know, having all the interpretation and everything, yeah, was very good indeed. In terms of the GAC, we had 76 GAC members, either presently or online, and 6 observers. So I think that's a pretty good number. And we benefited greatly through a capacity building weekend, thanks to many people in ICANN and many other people in the community for participating in this capacity building weekend on the Saturday and Sunday for the opening of the meeting on the Monday. This really does help because, as I think I've said before on these calls, and no doubt other people have said as well, the GAC has a very high turnover. I know from myself, being a civil servant, you know, you can be in a job one year and then you're in a different job the next. So bringing people up to speed on ICANN issues is very important. In terms of the in terms of some of the substance, GAC always has discussions of interest with a number of parties, the GNSO, of course, the CCTLDs, ALAC, which we greatly benefit from. Some of those issues that we're been looking at, closed generics, of course, is something of importance for the next round of GTLD applications, how you treat closed generic applications. And GAC is delighted to be able to take part in this working group that's been set up between the GNSO, GAC, and ALAC to look at these issues. We also looked at digital inclusion and internet connectivity as part of the capacity building weekend, which I think is very important, and it links in also to the work on universal acceptance, which certainly GAC has been involved in. And it was really great to take part in a session that was talking about the Universal Acceptance Day, which, of course, as you all know, is on the 16th of February next year. Just a couple of other points. DNS abuse, it won't surprise anyone to know that the GAC was talking about DNS abuse, and I think, you know, the GAC was very pleased with the different initiatives that were taking place in the community, especially in the contracted parties area, on certainly monitoring and responding to DNS abuse. But in our communique, we did have the opportunity of, if you like, of reminding the board that we've asked for the specific recommendations from the CCT review and the SSR2 review to be taken into consideration ahead of the next round of CCTLDs, sorry, of GTLDs. And finally, accuracy. The accuracy of registration data is something which is very important for GAC, and we had discussions on that, and very pleased about the progress of the working group that's taking place on that. Thank you.
And you give the floor to Olivier Crépin-Leblond.
I'm sorry, I didn't have the, to give the floor to Olivier is an absolute pleasure. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Goodness gracious, Nigel, thank you so much. Olivier Crépin-Leblond speaking, and I'm actually using the video link so that you can see me as well. Good to see friendly faces. So what did we have? What did the ALAC have at this ICANN meeting? Well, as you know, it's the long meeting that we have. It's the AGM, and so it's got a total of 6, 7, 8 days, starting from the Saturday, going on to the Thursday. It's not 3, 4, 5, 6 days, sorry, not 8. I'm, of course, not able to count. Anyway, starting on the Saturday, the ALAC, like the GNSO, met over the weekend to do its internal work, welcoming, of course, the ALAC members who hadn't really, for many, haven't really seen so much of each other in the past couple of years. I think, as Nigel Hickson mentioned, there was a weekend of capacity building cooperation, and the GAC and the ALAC had this session that spoke about the at-large roles, also the good example of cross-community cooperation, and especially the way that it's been happening in the Asia APAC region, as one would call it. There was also an at-large RALO coordination meeting that took place on the same day. Then on the Sunday, the meaty part of the work started with, of course, the operational and financial working group meeting to look at all of the different budgets that were taking place across ICANN. One of the mandates of the ALAC and the at-large community is to comment on these processes that are taking place. And then the ALAC had a meeting with the SAC where they discussed the name collision analysis project. They discussed the SAC one-to-one routing security. There was also a discussion on the SSAD, the System for Standardized Access and Disclosure, that is still being worked on at the moment, the replacement to the WHOIS system. And then an addendum to SAC 114. I can't remember what it related to, but it just added to this. And then we had a policy update that took place with the different leads on each one of the topics talked about. So we had subsequent procedures, transfer policy review, registration data accuracy, internationalized domain names, closed generics, and also the domain name system abuse, DNS abuse, a big topic for the at-large community. And that was just Sunday. Monday, of course, was the first official day of the ICANN meeting. And there was a policy discussion, one of the first big policy discussions to do with ICANN's goal for a multilingual internet through IDNs. A star topic for community, and we had members of the community from across all of ICANN, including many people that are sitting here on this call that spoke on this. There was a meeting of the ICANN board and ALAC mentioning, talking about the ALAC, the at-large advice on subsequent procedures. If I can remind you, it was quite substantial advice, quite a number of recommendations and points being made. So that is slowly being digested by the board and worked on in a very good way, a very satisfactory way. So progress on that. And then discussing, of course, other topics such as the operational design phase, the ODP, and then another topic being the advisory role of the ALAC and the advice process updates, the board explaining how they were now dealing with the different pieces of advice and their internal processes constantly being updated. After that, we had a session on the at-large diversity surveys. Leadership groups, the different RALOs have worked on this, and that was just Monday. Now I'm going to try and go a little faster because I know we're only given a couple of minutes for each one of the topics. The Tuesday was mostly regional at-large organizations working, mostly led by EURALO, the Asia Pacific Regional At-Large Organization, with some local students, but also a RALO coordination meeting for our RALOs to catch up with what's going on in each one of the areas, parts of the world. On the Wednesday, the GAC met with the ALAC, and Nigel, I think, mentioned this. The topics were internet fragmentation, the DNS and ICANN, a follow-up also from the big discussion that took place in the plenary, subsequent rounds, of course, and then local community cooperation, which is particularly good at the moment. The fragmentation, here we go, internet fragmentation, the DNS and ICANN followed that. And then the joint AFRALO-ICANN meeting took place, as it always does, at every ICANN meeting. And on this occasion, they had a topic which I think was, I completely forget it actually, it was here, universal acceptance as a means of accessing the internet in local languages. Again, to do with IDNs and universal acceptance, an important topic for at large. There was a capacity building session, the art of leadership, very interesting for our new members that have arrived, because of course, this is the AGM, so a lot of new people appeared around the bench, both people that were voted in by the at-large community, but also that came in through the nominating committee. And then finally, on that day, we had an ALAC and GNSO meeting. The ALAC doesn't always meet with the GNSO, but this one was really, really overdue in some way and did really, really well. And we spoke about the usual topics of DNS abuse, operational design phase, and general feedback on how things were going, since of course with a new type of PDP, our community of end users is directly involved with many of the PDPs that are taking place in the GNSO. And then finally, the last day, the Thursday, was the leadership wrap up, and with new people that have arrived in our community and others taking leave, being sad that they haven't been able to see each other for so long. Altogether, a very, very packed week indeed. I'm sorry that it took a little more time than expected to go through it. Thank you.
And you give the floor to Danko.
And I have to give the floor to Danko. Yeah, I can't see the diagram, unfortunately. So over to Danko.
Thank you. Well, it helps if you have two large monitors, you're sitting at home. So thank you, Olivier and Chris, for speaking more about the sessions. So I will take this opportunity to get more of a personal view and personal take on the meeting. So first of all, I like this format of this readout because the idea is to have short speaks and less presentations. And in a way, in my mind, this is a bit of continuation of the public forum we have at ICANN, because this gives you an opportunity to directly ask the questions from a lot of people, including the board, European board representatives. So as Katrina explained, we from the board had this meeting in two parts. First was a bit of team building and working together on the interboard issues, and then the board workshop, and then it was the full AGM, of course. And for me, including travel, that was 14 days. And 14 days because during the AGM part, I had to sit in my room because I had COVID, but I was able to participate from my room remotely, looking at the Congress Center when everyone else was. But the hybrid format worked. And I believe also this AGM was successful in the sense that I see that in Asia, that was a good number of people also present there, but also other world regions, some more or less challenged with jet lag and time difference, were really active. So I believe this worked well, and it shows that after the pandemics are communities are getting together. So from the board side, the most discussion on our side was the question that we actually asked the constituencies in our together meetings. That was, what collaborative actions should the community board and org together be undertaking to further progress in achieving our strategic priorities? So this question was actually also discussed beforehand inside the board, and we try to see what are the current priorities and what are the main challenges from the board side. And we think that the main theme for now is actually getting things done, and how to find ways to move forward, not only from the side of the board, but also from the side from the community and everyone together. Okay, my timer is making sound, so I'm also over 3 minutes, but I'll be brief. And this is the take from the board. And as Chris also mentioned, we had because it's yearly AGM, we had a rotations in the leadership, and I'm thanking Nigel for the congratulations. But still, you know, the board is renewing itself. We thank for the board members that term ended, and we are grateful for the community for selecting a great new board members to us. During the AGM itself, I believe my main takeaways was that it was an important discussion about priorities. We are working together on that, and we have to decide what are the most important stuff. But also from the board side, I see that there is a strong expectation also to board, or from the board, to be more effective in really delivering on the priorities. So we had a good discussion about who is disclosure, or the SSID Lite, about the ODP that is happening, of course, about the DNS abuse, about the ODP for SubPro, and also grant program that is in preparation. So these are the main things that we are driving, and these are, in my takeaway, all clear priorities for the community, but we also have to find a way how to optimize delivery on them. And well, I'm open for all the questions, and I think that this second part of our discussions will be more effective. Bruna, your time now.
Thank you so much. Hope you guys can hear me well. I didn't have a chance to test the audio as well. But presenting on behalf of NCSG, Non-Commercial Stakeholder Group, we just had a huge leadership transition moment. So some of our counselors left council. I also left the position of chair. Youth Helsinki is our incoming chair, and I'm going into the General Council right now. So that was on the top of our agendas for the week, and also like to plan for the future, and also discuss how can we address this demand for new and incoming volunteers into the NCSG. That's pretty much on our agenda. Other than that, we have discussed as well the policy transition program, which is a new program from ICANN Org that plans to bridge this gap between newcomers that have just left the leadership, like fellowship programs and an action program, and in this kind of moment in which they need to be onboarded into the community. So this is a program that the first moment is going to be a pilot with NCSG. So this was also a really relevant thing for us to try to understand how this program will address this gap between the programs and the community in general. And I swear to you all that we didn't exactly discuss just the deficiency of volunteers for NCSG, but we also see this as a good opportunity for everyone. So that's why we hold this so as a valuable initiative. Other than that, we were also present on the plenary about internet fragmentation. I was one of the co-moderators, but Fahzani Badiei was one of the speakers as well, shining a light on how internet fragmentation affects end users and some of the other problems and issues with abusive regulations, and also things that can affect our day-to-day lives online. Last but not least, I think we have also joined the GNSO and GAC dialogue on closed generics. Kathy Kleiman is our representative in this small group for the discussions, but this is also something that's being debated at our counselors and policy committee level. And one last thing that was on the NCSG's agenda was the discussions about human rights impact assessments in this moment where human rights can meet the ICANN debates and so on. So one of the things our community is currently discussing or considering is whether or not we can run human rights impact assessments for the community groups and not just the policy development processes, because we also need to address some problems and issues on representation, diversity, and things that can help improve our space within the ICANN community. I think that's pretty much everything that was on our agenda. I want to also go into the GNSO council agenda as well, because I'm pretty sure Philippe and Sebastian have a lot to say on this, but then I'll also hand the floor to Philippe. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruna. Hope you can hear me. This is Philippe Foucault here, speaking in my capacity as former chair of the GNSO. I was on site, and this has been an extremely busy AGM for the GNSO. Each GNSO SGC had their opportunity to meet individually and have joint meetings, as you would expect, during the AGM. And as usual, the council had a number of bilateral meetings, notably with the board and ALAC. The PDPs, the working groups on IDN and transfer review also met during that meeting. All of this led to an extremely rich and productive AGM, first face-to-face AGM since COVID. I think, so during 75, 2 of the GNSO Council's small teams were subject to a number of community discussions. I'll just highlight 2 of them. First, on the WHOIS disclosure system, as it's called now, with a design paper that was shared just before the meeting. A number of bilateral meetings discussed the next steps of this, and notably an expression of endorsement or support by the GNSO Council that was necessary for the board to move forward with this project, which is the simplified version of the SSAD, as you would recall. So this is in progress. The second output of the small team I'd like to highlight is the small team on DNS abuse, who had multiple occasions to describe their conclusions of their report, which is going to be published to council later this week, I think. I'll just pick up one issue, malicious registrations, where the report recommends that the council considers requesting the development of an issue report. So that's a policy development to some extent once some outreach has been done to all interested parties, including the GNSO houses. Obviously, questions around the new round were also high on our agenda. The council initiates 2 important projects for this, just before, during ICANN75. The first of which was the closed generics discussion that was mentioned by Nigel and Bruno just a moment ago. So that's a dialogue between the GNSO, the GAC, and ALAC, where a group of individuals appointed by the SGCs, the GAC, and ALAC are expected to revisit that issue, the goal being for the group to deliver their findings by the next ICANN meeting. The second project relative to the next round is the initiation of what's called a GNSO guidance process, GGP, on applicant support. This follows up from the SUPRO final report, where a number of issues have been identified in that area. And finally, since the AGM is also the election of a new GNSO chair and vice chairs, and personally my last ICANN meeting as GNSO chair, let me just conclude by saying that it's been an honor to serve in that capacity, which gives me the opportunity and pleasure to hand over to my fellow countryman, Sébastien Ducos, who's next. I think, Sébastien, over to you.
I am next, and I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to turn my camera on today. I'm having to wear a mask for reasons that people can imagine. So I will present on the activities of the registry stakeholder group. As Philippe mentioned, my future for the next year is going to be very GNS oriented. So I think that maybe somebody else will do this next time, but I'm happy to do it this time. I heard from Nigel and from Dan for the fact that they participated remotely. So did I. And I want to reiterate and re-express the fact that the remote participation in this new hybrid model is actually very, very smooth and very workable option for the future. And I do want to make sure that we are keeping that facility. I think that that's definitely an asset. In this new revised version of the hybrid meeting, we went back for the at least the registries and the registrars went back to some form of constituency day. The last meeting that we had in The Hague actually was registries and registrars together on a fairly tight schedule. I can't remember exactly how much time we had, but it was quite short. And we had to work around it and have our discussions outside of ICANN week. This time we were able to go back to it, and I think that was truly appreciated. In terms of topics, it's the same topics that are at top of our agenda for the registries. We're deep into contract renegotiations for basically being able to include RDAP in the replacement of who is RDAP SLAs and all these things. It's been a long time coming, and I think that we're getting to the point of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, as one says. DNS abuse, obviously a very, very big topic for us. Contract parties in general, registries in particular, in a different form from registrars. I also happen to be on the GNSO small team on DNS abuse that Philippe and others mentioned before, and so heavily into that topic. I just wanted to raise for those who may have missed it, that the contractor parties announced, I don't know how big the announcement was done, but I know that it was announced, basically that we are in discussions to go and voluntarily amend with ICANN, obviously, but voluntarily amend our contracts for registry specifically on articles surrounding DNS abuse, so Spec 11.3b mainly. I don't want to go too much into the weeds of that, but essentially wanting to clarify the way we do things. A lot of it is already existing in best practices, but trying to fold that back into the contract in some way or form, which is one of the DNS abuse small team. I'm extremely sorry. I'm going to have to take a quick break. Natalia, maybe could you take over and I'll finish my speech after you, if I may. I have an emergency.
Thank you very much. Natalia Filin is speaking. So I'm a secretary of EURALO and the vice chair of Outreach and Engagement subcommittee. And yes, thank you very much for this, my slide. So I will try to be brief, and I can say now that we all know that our European region within ICANN is now one of the most difficult in terms of the impact of external processes to our internal communications. our ability to work together, to build new processes, to maintain activities. And so we can see that we will continue to develop the EURALO, other RALOs, our communication channels, and our work at large. And I would like to thank very much Sebastian, the chair of EURALO, because it's not so easy work now for us. Thank you very much. And I would like to know that it was my first hybrid, for me, a personal meeting since 2019, when I was in person in Kuala Lumpur. And I would like to thank ICANN CEO board, ICANN staff, all of my colleagues and friends for creating a very neutral, working and warm environment. And I would like to say that ICANN75 was a perfect. And thanks very much for local Malaysian host for putting all efforts to meet all of us and to create this environment. So once again, I would like to draw our attention that ICANN open for all participants of technical internet governance processes, and you are very welcome here. And you know, as Jonathan Zak, our new ALAC chair, but Maureen, you know, you are in our hearts and in our future working processes. That is great. So Jonathan Zak said that a real ICANN meetings has a reason to put us together, to not just for discussion between each other, but much more important to communicate with a broader community and establish a real professional relationship, which now can be an oil for our policy making and development processes inside. And you know that at large is a core of this bottom-up processes, and we are in the core of multi-stakeholder model. And as my colleagues noted that all of our sessions and joint meetings during ICANN75 had an aim to exchange with advisory committees and supporting organizations, discuss the aims, the result of the current work, and to look at the perspective of implementation of the ALAC recommendations. So I create this short slide with I think useful links for you. If you missed some session or our meetings, you can go there and find some missed parts of our discussion and sessions. I would like to say that yes, what were on the top of our discussions, Dns abuse, universal acceptance, diversity in leadership within ICANN, legislative and fragmentation issues, and etc., etc. So, and about our internal at-large processes, I can say that we will go ahead with our mobilization and outreach engagement work, because we are building a new format of outreach and engagement with the coordination and support of the GSE team. Thank you very much for your support and help. And I hope maybe it will be again a renaissance of our community, of our work together. So great that we are together on this way. And I would like to say a few words about achievements and, you know, springboards for active, committed, and very professional members. With our honor and joy, we saw our EURALO and at-large faces and names as recognized as the best community members. As already Chris said, the Tarek Kemal Award recipient is Wolfgang Kleinwachter, and we saw a large of at-large members on the stage during community recognition ceremony. And
Y sí, pues, o sea,
Okay, we would like also again congratulate our EURALO representatives who took a new position on ICANN board and PTI board. So again, Danka, Tobias, we applaud to you. And I think that is a great showcase of our community and a good example for us in our work to move forward and to have a great perspectives in the community. So thank you very much. Congratulations. And I give the floor to you, Martin.
Thank you so much, Natalia. So yeah, it's indeed a time of change for me as well. And it's been a real pleasure also to see in EURALO, in Kuala Lumpur, many of you, and to see again how well hybrid works. I think we got it right. We will make sure and continue to make sure that the meetings are inclusive in many ways, but also in the way of participating on a distance as well as possible. I heard a lot of things say, so I'll just make short references to what I've heard. My slide is in honor of Philippe, who is leaving his chair position and having the Mont Saint-Michel behind him. I thought I'd take the mill that is back here as I'm leaving my position too. It's been a real pleasure to work for me over the last 3 years together with Leon and the board and directly with the ALEC leadership. In Kuala Lumpur, it's been a pleasure to introduce Tripti as the chair-elect to Maureen and Jonathan as your chair-elect at that time. No doubt Jonathan will find it over time. This direct relationship also adds to the best possible dynamics between ALEC and the board, as we've seen over the years. Maureen, I see you can't let go yet. Very welcome in the European time zone and very good to see you on this call as well. My commitment to you and the board is to continue to listen to the community and serve at my best ability with a focus on fulfilling our mission and doing so relying on our bottom-up, multi-stakeholder approach and fulfilling our fiduciary duties to the fullest. We've come through the challenging period of COVID together, and together we now need to stand to ensure we continue to be inclusive, not only for regions, cultures, languages, gender identities, but also really in terms of virtual and in-person presence. As I said during the ALEC wrap-up session, just a short repeat, we are committed to continue to ensure that ICANN consistently delivers best-in-class hybrid public meetings. And another priority, as Danko mentioned, is the grant program that is consistent with ICANN's mission. And between now and the end of October, we are working on an initial plan for that program. And one of my new tasks on the board will be to lead that. I also want to point out that the holistic review terms of reference is currently open for comments. And important, you also contribute to ensuring that the scope is right and you feel the timing is reasonable. Xavier, who's on this call, is leading this on the org side. Crucial that you let us know what you think. And I look forward to continue to be engaged in that as well. And another point that hasn't been mentioned yet is that the ICANN board is also working with the org to support the community with any dependencies needed to conclude implementation of the independent review process standing panel during the upcoming fiscal year. With that, yes, I very much agree. It was a great honor and pleasure to give Wolfgang that award on behalf of the board for his capacity building contributions, I would say, over his lifetime. And I really loved the celebration of all those who've put in 10 years of their time to universal acceptance. And it's always a pleasure to see and to recognize how many good people we have. We see them when they leave the board because they get a thank you, but we also see new people coming in all the time. So let's keep it going together. So with that, unless Sebastian is back, I'd hand it over to EURALO.
Thank you, Martin. My name is Yrjö Länsipuro. I'm the EURALO delegate to the nomination committee 2023. So the AGM is always the place where the old nomination committee ceases to exist and the new NOMCOM comes alive. So the 2023 NOMCOM held a kick-off meeting familiarizing newcomers with the procedures and selecting subcommittee members and so on and so forth. And the first task of the NOMCOM now is, of course, outreach to spread the word out that there are places to be filled on the ICANN leading body. And here I would like to ask every one of you actually to help us to spread the word and to, if you know people who would be good for filling the new positions, please let them know and ask them to apply. And here on the screen, you see the positions that are going to be filled by the NOMCOM this year. 2 board directors, 1 position on PTI board, 1 on CCNSO council, and 3 open positions for at-large committee that's to say 1 from Africa, 1 from Asia, Australia, Pacific Islands region, and 1 from Latin America, Caribbean. And finally, 2 open positions for GNSO Council, 1 for each houses. So these are the positions, and the application window opens in early January and closes in mid-March. And as per the ICANN bylaws, the NOMCOM final selections have to be completed like 2 months before the next AGM, which will be in October 23 October. So the selectees must be announced by the end of August. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yrjö. Thank you very much, all the speakers. Sebastian Ducos, do you want to, are you back, and do you want to?
I'm back, and I'm very, very sorry. I mean, I'll just be very quick.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that in terms of the WHOIS disclosure system, registries in this version are less implicated, less involved. For memory, the system will take requests from the public and send them to registrars at this stage. And so the position of the registries is very much to follow what the registrars are suggesting and backing them on that. SubPro, obviously, right now, and until the ODA is released, there's limited amount of work, but it's obviously it remains a very hot topic for us, an important topic for us. And I guess to this extent, the topic of closed generics, which Nigel referred to earlier from the GAC, is one of interest for us, and in particular in trying to find solutions and avenues that allow, in general, SubPro to keep its course, and making sure that we all keep that in our heads, in top of mind. And that was pretty much it. Thank you, Sebastian, and back to you.
Thank you, Sebastian, and I hope that you will feel better soon, and you get back to good health. It's time for question, but as I don't see yet Hans, I will say a few words. The first one, I wanted to say to the board members, Katrina, we will have to work together as you are taking new position as chair of one of the board group, and I guess with holistic review, we will have some work to be done in the next few months, and that will be great. Danko, welcome and congratulations as vice chair of the board. And Martin, we will miss you. Of course, you will stay on the board, and I am sure that you will be able to keep the tradition to participate to those readouts. But it was a difficult period to be chair of the board. It's not easy to be chair of the board, but it was even more difficult in that period. Therefore, thank you. I can continue to work, and part of that is due to your engagement and participation, and really it was a pleasure to work with you as a chair of the board. Of course, change of the chair of the GNSO, it's also an important points, but I am sure, Philippe, you have done a great job. You too, during a difficult period, and welcome, Sebastian, to your new role. And I will stop here for the thanks, and as I just learned that Xavier will have to leave us earlier than I was expecting, I will give him the floor now. And if you have a question, you can we can keep discussing that after the intervention of Xavier. And Xavier, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sebastian, and apologies for not being able to stay longer towards the end of this session. And thank you for organizing, and thank you for the invitation to this readout. Indeed, a very interesting and useful opportunity to provide feedback. A couple of thoughts. While ICANN75 was actually the second face-to-face meeting in a long time after the pandemic, it felt probably for many like the first meeting. A lot of people attended ICANN75 but in person, but had not attended ICANN74 in person. So it was the first meeting for many, and there was a strong sense of enthusiasm in the ability to meet, and the AGM for ICANN is always a very significant meeting in terms of the amount of interaction, in terms of the number of sessions, and as we've discussed, it's a time for leadership change as well. And with that, I wanted to emphasize that to me, there's also a strong sense of continuity, because if you think about it that way, while it was a new opportunity to meet together and to be face-to-face together, and it felt new and it felt like a change from the past 2 years, it also reinforced, in my mind, the fact that this community has continued its work throughout the pandemic, has been very resilient throughout the pandemic, and the work has not stopped. The work has continued. The activities of the community, the organ, the board have continued to be very intense, very strong. And from that perspective, it's a strong continuation and a testament to the capacity and the dedication of this community to the mission of ICANN to maintain the unique identifier system. And when you look at the leadership change, I also feel this also gives a strong sense of continuation, because the maturity of an organization is also measured by its ability to go through leadership changes in a smooth fashion. And I think all the leadership changes that have occurred at the AGM have shown to be smooth transitions with continuation of commitments. And Martin gave that admirable example earlier of the leadership change. It doesn't mean that people stop serving and committing to the organization. And I think that this shows the continuity of the institution beyond the change of the people or the change of roles of the people. And many of you who have changed positions recently continue to serve in the community. So this is, I think, also an illustration of the continuity of the organization, of the continuity of the work of ICANN, and the continuity of this community to continue to serve the mission of the organization. So I think this is an admirable testament, and that it shouldn't go unnoticed. It's very important for the sustainability of the multi-stakeholder model that the institution, the governance of the organization can continue to happen. And ICANN75 was a very strong testament to that. And there was a lot of substantive discussions during ICANN75. It was not only, far from it, about change in governance or change in positions. It was very much about very substantive discussions, and all your interventions in the past hour have shown how intense those substantive discussions were. And that's exactly what it needs to be. It needs to be about the word of ICANN. It needs to be about maintaining the institutions alive and dynamic and substantive and constructive. And I think ICANN75 was a great example of that. It's a great milestone in the past 3 years in the resilience of ICANN. And I hope that we can all look forward to a future where the pandemic will be hopefully a bad memory. And our work can continue. It can continue with the periodic face-to-face interaction that the ICANN meetings offer us, so that our work continue to be intense, continue to be effective, continue to improve, and that as a result, ICANN's mission will be well served. Thank you very much, everyone, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to be able to speak. And thank you, Sébastien, for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Xavier. Nice to have you, and nice to hear you. Also your point of view about the organization and the continuation of the organization. I know that it's important. I hope that it will be the case. We have, as you can see, have a lot of new leaders within the organization. It's from my point of view, it's a continuation, but in the same time, it's a new start. We will see where we go. I just wanted to give, as I don't see any hands, just few elements. The first one is that when we talk about the diversity, there were a session organized during the ICANN meeting. It was diversity about all the leadership bodies of ICANN from the start of ICANN to now. I am available to give the presentation of the result of this survey to any groups who are willing to have it. I gave it to at large, but it's of course open to all the other group. And as I was leaving this element, I can give it a presentation to you. And second, I know I will. It's a little bit word, but it is not a EURALO readout. Our goal as a EURALO leader, it's not just to talk about EURALO, but to talk about Europe. It's why it's important for us to have all of you from different parts of the community. Of course, we try to have people first from Europe to have this regional point of view. But it's important not just to talk about our own corner, but to the different corner of this organization. And it's why it is a multilingual, multi-stakeholder readout organized by EURALO, but not a EURALO call. And as I see one end before closing the meeting, I will give the floor to Lucien Castex. Lucien, please go ahead.
Hello, Sebastian. I hope you can hear me. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for the great readout. It was excellent to have this overview from different perspectives of ICANN75. I wondered about, it was discussed by Nigel and other multilingualism. Fostering multilingualism is quite a key factor in inclusion in the light of the global issues that we are discussing regarding the development of internet and so on. And I wanted to ask the speakers what they're feeling about it, about having multiple language spoken, and how it could allow for more participation and more meaningful collaboration. Thank you. And thank you from Bucharest.
Thank you, Lucien. I will try to answer a question. It's very important, and it's a pity that we were not able to have French interpretation today. But it's important that we have as much as possible the interpretation in different languages. In the same time, the fact that we are mainly working in English, each of us need to make an effort to speak clearly, not just for the interpretation, but also to be understood by others. Because even if we speak good English or not too bad English, we still have different way of speaking it, and therefore we need to make an effort. And it's a case here. It's not always a case from people where it's a first language, it's English, and specifically when you are coming from a country where the accent is very, very strong. But usually they try to help also with that. But I think that interpretation, it's a must. It's something we need to still work on. And once again, even if it was not possible for French, we had the Russian and Spanish and English for this time. Philippe, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sebastian. And just on this, I just want to commend the CCNSO and org for making French interpretation, for that matter, available for the CCNSO participants. I think it was really useful. I know that, and count me in, there is some frustration within the GNSO that, especially for working sessions, we cannot not use English for non-English speakers. It's even been a bit of a frustration to me, not having, not being able to make it more valuable than it was. Appreciating that it's really difficult. I've come up against that difficulty in other forums. It's really difficult not to use English in working sessions. But I think it's a happy medium that we need to strike. I just wanted to stress the CCNSO's initiative, because I think it's been really useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. And with that word, I will end this meeting a little bit earlier. Our hopefully next readout will be after the Cancun meeting. See you all in Cancun, hopefully. And for the EURALO members and some of the people invited, we will have beginning of November EURALO days, and I hope to see some of you during this meeting in Brussels. And once again, thank you for all the speakers, and thank you for the ones who participate from the other side of the world, Maureen, Cheryl, and Shiva, I guess, and some others. I hope that it was interesting for all of you. And once again, thank you for this broad view of the ICANN meeting. Take care and see you soon. The meeting is now closed. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bonsoir.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Take care.